road. Hello, my friends, and welcome to This Week in Space. I'm your host with the most, Joan Emerson Bell. I'm a tarot reader, astrologer, therapist. I do a lot of things. Some might say too many things, but I'm just going to roll with it. And as long as it's not too broken, I'm just going to keep showing up every Monday at 11-ish Mountain Time to give you the breakdown of what's going on in the celestial spheres, talking about all the astrological transits of the week to help you navigate this week in space with a little style, a little grace, with an elegance, and a savoir faire. Before we get into the astrology of the week, a couple of announcements. I'll be giving a presentation at this year's Astromagia conference, which is a great conference on astrological magic. I've learned a ton from being there. I've volunteered there for the past several years and learned a bunch about animacy and magic and astrology and how these things sort of intertwine, which I have found incredibly beneficial in my practice. And this year I have the good fortune of presenting a talk called Sticks and Stars, which is about the element of water astrologically, psychologically, magically, ecologically. It's going to be a pretty dang interesting meditation and meander through the element of water. So if y'all are interested in astrological magic, deepening your practice, maybe learning something new, check out the Astromagia conference. I'm also going to be putting together a panel discussion on the moon, Jupiter, and joy as a revolutionary act. That's in the works. So that's going to be going on there as well with some great astrologers and magicians. So, yeah, something to look forward to. That's going to be November 1st and 2nd. So, a great way of spending All Souls Day and Day of the Dead, if y'all are so inclined, and maybe recovering from your Halloween hangover. Also, I just want to let folks know that I put this report up on the YouTubes. You can find it at Camp Wizard Camp. It also comes out as a podcast. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts at. And it's under the name This Week in Space with 3 exclamation points, not to be confused with This Week in Space with 0 exclamation points, which is something else altogether that I can't vouch for because I've never listened to it. And yeah, also, if you're watching this on the YouTube or listening on the podcast, you can watch this live stream and also interact with me on the Instagram, and you can follow me at Blind Stallion Space Wizard. And yeah, if you're liking this, share it with somebody else. Spread the word, spread the love, my friends. And with that, let's get into this week in space, shall we? So, we are looking at this week in space from October the 27th, 2025 to November the 2nd of the same year. Almost there, almost at the end. Next one's going to be better, I really hope. Kicking us off on Tuesday, October the 28th, we have Mars in Scorpio, trine Jupiter in Cancer. This is going down at 24 degrees and 48 arc minutes of these water signs. And a trine happens between the same element. So, because we have Mars in Scorpio, the trine will be to another water sign. And one of the kind of benefits this week is we are getting a grand water trine that Mars is activating. Mars in Scorpio is moving in to form a grand water trine with Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Pisces. And this is good stuff. The trine is a harmonious and supportive aspect where planets kind of use their strengths to collaborate with each other. And so, again, this will be happening in the element of water. So there are themes of emotion, connection, intuition that these planets will sort of be utilizing and bringing to the surface throughout their collaborations. So Mars will come in and trine Jupiter first, and then will perfect their trine with Saturn on Wednesday. And this grand trine will be active for most of the week. And Mars can also operate like kind of a trigger, right? Their heat and propensity for action kind of activates things. So as they come into relationship with Saturn and Jupiter, Mars may kick the Jupiter-Saturn trine, which is building, and it might kick it into gear a little bit and kind of activate some of the themes that Jupiter and Saturn are collaborating on with each other. And that's great because Jupiter and Saturn work really well together when they are in good relationship with one another. Jupiter is the planet of expansion, and Saturn deals with contraction. And when we have expansion and contraction working well together, we do things like digest food, give birth, breathe, all of these kind of fundamental principles of life. The Jupiterian expansion hits the limit of Saturn and can kind of direct that energy so it doesn't dissipate. And the Saturnian structure and contraction meets Jupiter's qualities of optimism and expansion and becomes less crushing. And so when we get these two working well together, it can be incredibly beneficial. So, anywho, with Mars trying to Jupiter, we may notice an increase of energy. Again, Jupiter is kind of expansive and abundant, and Mars is energy, action, courage, bravery. So we may be feeling good about ourselves and feel like we have an extra boost of juice, which we can use in the service of our actions and activities today and throughout the early part of the week. Mars is not so into strategy. They're more into racing into something and getting mixed up in it all the way to the top. But Jupiter is a planet of wisdom and big picture thinking, which can help Mars have some foresight and avoid some of the pitfalls which may come with their usual brand of impulsivity. You know what I'm saying? So Jupiter is a planet of expansion and optimism, and Mars deals with courage and action. Mars is also connected with our physical energy. And so we may feel an expansion in our energy levels and a sense that the actions we take today will turn out well. And I love that. And this is really helpful when we are able to move into any endeavor that we put our minds to with the vision of success. Because I think that this helps us to achieve better outcomes. Having kind of the blueprint of, oh, I'm doing this, but this is going to work out well, and this is what it's going to feel like when it works out well, and this is how it's going to look when it works out well, and I'm just going to do it because it's already done. And so Jupiter also might expand Mars's courage and sense of bravery, which gives us a little support in trying out new things, taking risks, and stepping up to a challenge. Sometimes Mars's energy can feel a little frenetic and be hard to sit with or figure out what to do with. But Jupiter's expansive qualities and the supportive aspect will help us to sort of tap into a more easeful flow of energy. And this should help us to take effective action in the service of the goals that we have set our minds to. And it allows us to pursue what we desire with some awareness of the best possible processes to move towards our desires, as well as the potential outcomes of our action, which can be incredibly helpful. Because again, Mars is not really thinking about, oh, this is what could happen if I do this. Mars is just like, I'm having a feeling, I've got some energy, I'm going to make something happen. And so having that kind of awareness, that bigger picture thinking that Jupiter can bring to the party will really help us to think about, okay, this is what happens when I take this action. We can kind of play the tape forward and see, okay, if I direct my energy in this way and take this action, what are the intended outcome of this and what is most likely going to happen? This transit also might boost our self-confidence. When we are feeling more energetic, we tend to feel more capable, and this helps us to feel more confident. And this is mixed with Jupiter's optimism, which tells us, I'm looking good, I'm feeling good, and things are going to work out all right. And so, if you notice this in any capacity over the week, see if you can just sit in that sense of self confidence and cultivate that a little bit, because this is super important. Bring a little bit of that feeling with you throughout the week, because I think it's really important to tap into these places where we're feeling good, our energy levels are feeling right, because it's not always like that. However, when we can tap into this feeling and kind of cultivate it a little, hold it with us a little bit, we can come back and access that in the times where we're maybe not feeling as good, and we can, when we're not feeling as good, we can tell a story of like, oh my God, it's always going to be like this. And having that memory of self-confidence, of feeling capable, of feeling energetic, and being able to access that just a little bit can sort of break that story that it's always going to be like this, or I'm never going to feel good again, or, my clothes don't fit right, or whatever those stories might be. And so if we keep some of that self-confidence in our pocket, might come in handy later on, especially towards the end of the week when we have a Venus opposing Chiron, which can really bring up some of these narratives around core wounds and can kind of pull us into a state of, oh, nothing works. So, you know, just think about that as we move through the week. As you're feeling good and looking good, try and like hold a little bit of that with you. So, moving right along, Wednesday, October the 29th, we have Mercury in Scorpio, trine Neptune, who's retrograde in Pisces. This is going down at the spooky old anaretic degree of both of these water signs at 29 degrees and 50 arc minutes. So, a trine is a supportive and harmonious aspect. In this situation, we have Mercury, the planet of cognitive thought and communication, coming into a flowing, free flowing aspect with Neptune, the planet of dreams, fantasy, and imagination. Neptune Mercury contacts are not a great time for logical thought processes, but they can be really beneficial for creative imagination. And so, this is a great time for creative practices because we have a greater ability to sort of let the mind wander, go into reverie, and allow ourselves to kind of drop down in the creative flow of the imagination. This is a great day for spiritual practices of all sorts, dream work, creative writing, daydreaming, allowing your mind to wander, which I think is a really important quality. We can sometimes have a tendency to get locked into logical thought processes, which there's nothing wrong with that. And there can be a story around productivity. Oh, I need to be focused on something that is doing something and meaning something and getting me somewhere. However, allowing the sort of space to daydream, to go into the imagination, to go into reverie, allows for unconscious information to sort of bubble up to the surface, which is really helpful for problem solving, creative thinking, new ways of seeing things, accessing inspiration. And these are all really vital qualities of being alive. This is also a great day for having conversations with other people, being in connection with other people that can be imaginative, that can be free flowing, and that don't need to come to any conclusions, but can kind of meander and flow and spark inspiration. So, something else to consider is that Neptune is foggy and is connected with illusions and delusions. Mercury, our mental filter that we process the world through and our ability to sort of take in and digest information. And with trine or with the Neptune Mercury contact, we might get swept up in the Neptunian fantasy a little bit. We might not have the desire to use our rational thought processes or our mercurial discernment. So if something sounds too good to be true, kind of midweek, watch out for getting wrapped up in the fantasy and maybe give it a day or two before pulling the trigger on any actual commitments or contracts. Neptune likes to at the world through rose-colored glasses, and Mercury may love the way things look through the Neptunian lens, and not really want to employ the mercurial gifts of analytical thinking. So just don't buy any bridges in New York until the fog of Neptune has lifted. And remember, things that sound too good to be true probably are. So it's okay to sort of indulge those fantasies, but maybe hold off on taking any concrete action until you get the maybe bigger picture or a little bit more clarity on what's actually happening here. And so the other thing that I want to say is this transit kind of makes me think of the story of the Lotus Eaters from the Odyssey. Odysseus and his crew in this portion of the story make a brief stopover for water on the island of the Lotus Eaters, and as they're making their long and arduous trip back to Ithaca. And some of these sailors start kicking it with the lotus eaters, and they start eating the lotuses and hanging out and having a really good time. And they forget all about their desire to return to their families and their homes. They become so blissed out that nothing else matters anymore, and they kind of refuse to leave this false paradise. And Odysseus has to leave them behind. Oftentimes, this story is equated to substance use and getting lost in a narcotic fog. This could also be compared to any type of opiate for the masses, social media or any type of scrolling behavior, which kind of hypnotizes us and transfixes us and makes us forget about ourselves as we're just looking at the flashing lights and pretty pictures scrolling by. And, this type of behavior may alleviate some of the struggle or suffering that we may be feeling, but we also might forget about the actual joy of being present in our lives and with ourselves and with our connections. Or, like Odysseus's men, forget what we are actually doing and where we are trying to go in our lives. We may even forget the reason that we opened up the app in the first place, which happens to me all the dang time. Also, I read this somewhere recently, and I cannot remember which book in my stacks of books everywhere I was reading, but it was saying that the lotus eaters may be related to spiritual practices that disconnect us from the actual experience of living life. And I think about this in terms of things like spiritual bypassing or a refusal to be with the challenges, pain, and difficulties of life because it is more convenient to believe that everything is great or is in perfect alignment or whatever the story that we want to tell ourselves is. And while I think that it's not healthy to be constantly grinding into the dysregulating suffering of the world and constantly looking at the news, trying to figure it out, I think it is equally unhelpful to refuse to acknowledge the reality of suffering in the world and our lived experience of it and our personal experience of it. Neptune's return to Pisces can bring with it the desire to stay blissed out. But Mercury and Scorpio will probably not be having that for too long. They'll move into Sagittarius a little later in the day. But, at the 29th degree, we are also kind of looking back over the experience of the sign and what did I learn and what am I figuring out? And what am I taking with me? And at the end of the day, Mercury in Scorpio wants to dig deep into the mud and the muck and get to the bottom of things. And, this also, Neptune and Mercury's trine here at the very end of Mercury's time in Scorpio may be like, oh, dang, that mud and muck was like pretty intense. And I just want to zone out for a little bit as a way of allowing myself to process or just discharge some of the things that I found out during my time in the depths of Scorpio. So, I think both of these things can be true, but we don't want to uh, stay surface or sort of like disassociate our way away from the actual lived reality of our experience here. And along these lines, with kind of Mercury's curiosity and desire to dig deep in Scorpio, just be careful that you don't follow some unhinged Neptunian rabbit down a hole and find yourself being pulled into some Delulu nonsense that actually pulls you off course and sort of slows down your quest to get back home. So, also Wednesday, October the 29th, Mercury will enter Sagittarius shortly after they perfect their trine to Neptune. This will kind of lessen the foggy influence of Neptune and that they have over our mental and cognitive processes and as well as our communication. When a planet sort of, even if it's still in orb of an aspect, as a planet leaves the sign, that influence of that aspect, I think, dissipates a little bit. However, when Mercury moves into Sagittarius, they move into their detriment in that Jupiter ruled sign. So Mercury is all about details, and Sagittarius is all about the big picture. Mercury is about information, and Sagittarius is about truth. Mercury wants to like keep unpacking and pulling everything out everywhere so it can kind of figure out what everything is and figure out how everything works. But Sagittarius wants to get to the point and to have a overarching narrative of why all this stuff is here in the first place and to have a target and a goal that it is striving towards. And Mercury's continual unpacking and questioning really infringes on that Sagittarian desire to focus in on the target and to go for it. So, Mercury's curiosity is not really valued in Sagittarius, which is sad because curiosity is seen as heretical in a place that really wants to believe in truth. And Mercury in Sagittarius is a bit of a heretic because they are constantly questioning the beliefs that Sagittarius holds so dearly. And the and heretics throughout time have not had an easy go of it. And we may find that the mercurial curiosity becomes sort of suppressed in the coming days. And, I think this is one of the big reasons that Mercury has a difficult time in Sagittarius because they become sort of heretical and, are maybe like shunned or threatened or their questioning is not valued or is shut down. We may notice that the inquisitive nature of Mercury challenges some of our ideas and beliefs, and this can be really uncomfortable. No one likes having their ideas challenged or questioned. And we may notice an increase of this sense of discomfort as Mercury stations retrograde in Sagittarius on November the 9th, so next week. And we are being asked to do a internal review and rethink some of our ideas of truth and what we believe in. Hold on one second, I'm gonna check the comment. Uh-huh. Gina Maria saying, she she loses her phone all the time, and that feeling of walking into a room and being like, why am I even in this room? And then like leaving and being like, oh yeah, my phone, and then going back in the room and being like, where is the thing? And I think that's a very Mercury Neptune sort of vibe right there. Okay, moving right along. Also, Wednesday, October the 29th, we have Mars in Scorpio coming in to perfect their trine with Saturn, who is retrograde in Pisces at 25 degrees and 54 arc minutes. So, Mars and Saturn are both malefic planets, and malefics don't really like anybody. So, usually the vibe of these planets has maybe a difficult time finding a harmonious balance. They're quite different. Mars is like the gas pedal, Saturn is like the brake. Mars is youth, Saturn is old age. Mars is hot, Saturn is cold. Mars wants to rush in and take action for immediate gratification. Saturn wants to take it slow and delay gratification uh, for long-term stability. However, in a trine, these qualities can work to support each other. For example, when we use the gas pedal and the brake in a harmonious relationship, the car tends to work really well. So when we apply Saturn's structure to Mars's energy, we can have really focus and directed action, which can lead to long-term success. And Mars is exalted in Saturn's sign of Capricorn. And one of the reasons is that the goal-oriented and structured nature of Capricorn helps Mars to really focus and channel their energy, which can result in very positive and productive outcomes. So this transit helps us to really work at a steady pace. Now we get to experience the limitations of what is possible, which allows us to take focused action and to maintain a steady energetic output. And I think that this is great coming off of Mars trine from Jupiter, where we have maybe increased energy, coming off Mercury's trine to Neptune, where we might have really good sort of inspiration or imagination might be kicking in. And then Saturn is like, cool, we're going to do something practical with this. Mars, come on, we're getting this done. And, Mars being enlisted in this trine, Mars's energy being enlisted in this trine to achieve goals, to get things done, to work at a steady pace, can be really helpful. And now we can kind of focus our energy on building or creating or doing things along the lines of whatever vision or inspiration we may have received from that Mercury Neptune trine. Saturn helps us to do the difficult work that we may not want to do, and Mars has the courage and the gumption to really take it on. Saturn helps Mars to sustain our energy so we can keep plugging away at the tasks that we have set before us. And, this is a great time to really think about, okay, midweek, what do I want to work on? Do I have a project that requires some dedicated energy? Or even, do I want to set up the circumstances so that I can, if I'm feeling kind of energetic, if I'm feeling inspired, I have the materials to begin working on something or to take action around producing or creating or making something that is tangible because that's something that Saturn's really into. And so this is a great time to engage in work that requires dedication and perseverance. And Saturn's caution helps us to pay attention to details and to measure twice and cut once so that we don't screw things up. And this transit will help us to consider sort of practical concerns and to maintain focus as we engage in whatever work we've decided to set before us. So, um, also, Wednesday, October the 29th, kind of big day in space, we have Mercury just entering Sagittarius, opposing Uranus in Gemini. This is occurring at 0 degrees and 21 arc minutes of these mutable signs. So, this transit can give us some wild ideas. We also may find that we get some fresh perspectives, which can contribute to out of the box thinking and creative problem solving, which is great. This also may inspire us to engage in new ways of communicating and radical ways of exchanging or processing information. It also might bring some shocking information to the forefront of our thinking. However, this transit can kind of electrify our minds, and we may find that we have some increased mental activity, which, if you're anything like me, is not always a great thing. We may find we are experiencing racing thoughts, or we may find ourselves kind of bypassing our normal speech filters and just blurting things out. And Mercury in Sagittarius can be a little bit heretical, like I was saying, and challenge other people's beliefs. Or it can go the other way and get pretty dogmatic about whatever stance it decides to take, which it might not actually believe in, but it might be like, cool, I'm gonna just commit to this bit for this conversation and argue it out. And so we may find ourselves blurting things out or talking more than we intended today. So, or we might find ourselves being a little extra blunt. So, just watch out that you don't say anything that is going to be too difficult to walk back, especially as Mercury will be stationing retrograde. So things that come up today will probably end up being revisited during Mercury's retrograde that begins at the end of next week. So remember to breathe because breath is important. And if you can, take a pause before just rattling off whatever comes into your mind to whoever will listen. And definitely read your emails over before you hit send, especially if you're really feeling yourself and getting on your high Sagittarian horse and you really feel the need to tell people the way it is. Just read it over once or twice before you hit send because there's no unsend on the email. And we also may notice a increase in nervous energy. And this is a great time to care for our nervous systems and maybe cut back on the caffeine or other stimulants just a little bit. Maybe try taking some adaptogens or doing things that are soothing to the nervous system. Uranus is pretty electric, and Mercury deals with our nervous system. And so we may feel a little fried by all the energy that is moving through the system today and all the thoughts that are racing in our mind. And so we want to try and take care of ourselves however we can so we don't melt down and burn out because it's only Wednesday. However, this transit also lends itself to quick thinking, and we may notice new creative insights. But because our minds are working overtime, we might want to have a way of collecting some of these ideas before they evaporate or get washed out by the next blinding flash of insight. So, get your notes app out or pen and paper if you're old fashioned. We also might notice some feelings of impatience and increased desire for excitement. We might be looking for outlets for our energy and mental activity. We might find ourselves looking for something new and novel. Again, Mercury is very curious and it gets sort of electrified or amped up by its opposition to Uranus. And our curiosity might feel supercharged. There can definitely be feelings of restlessness, which make it hard to stay focused or even sit in one place. And so we might have difficulty focusing on the tasks that we have set before us. May even be a challenge to stay focused on anything. So if you're feeling scattered and a little antsy today, give yourself some grace. This may be a good day for studying or writing. And just allow some space for yourself if you need to keep your attention moving and have a hard time really getting into one thing. And this is happening the same day as that Mars Saturn trine. So, Mars and Saturn is like, I want to direct my energy into this. And Mercury Uranus is like, nah, but what about this? What about this? What about this? So just give yourself a little bit of grace. And if you need to, you can be working on four things. You can go ride a bike, you can go take a walk. It doesn't matter to me. Just give ourselves a little space for yourself if you need to keep your attention moving and really have a difficult time digging into one thing. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just what the stars have dictated this week. So also see if you can find ways to discharge some of the mental energy. And if these ways can't be productive, then hopefully they can at least be pleasurable. So, done with Wednesday. Moving on to Thursday, October the 30th. Today we have Mercury in Sagittarius, sextile Pluto in Aquarius. This is happening at 1 degree and 26 arc minutes. So, as Mercury moves out of this opposition to Uranus, they will come into a supportive sextile to Pluto. This transit may cause us to sort of dig deeper and to follow the threads of whatever new, exciting, revolutionary, or shocking information may have come up when Mercury was opposing Uranus. Pluto is the lord of the underworld. They have a tendency to pull us below the surface of normative consciousness and into the realm of shadows and shades. Mercury is the psychopomp who brings souls between the worlds, and they have access to the realm of Hades and in the underworld. We may open a line of communication with the unconscious and receive some information that may be bubbling up from the depths or lurking below the surface of our day consciousness. And so there may be a desire to dig down and get below the surface and to engage in some sort of digging and excavating and also complex problem solving. There also might be an increased desire to communicate what you are excavating from down there and what is emerging into your mental awareness. Pluto deals with power. So this transit sort of lends itself to the power of communication. And this may give our words and our thoughts an extra level of power or weight or give them a deeper impact. So you want to choose your words wisely as we move into the end of the week, especially coming off of that kind of like rattly Mercury Uranus opposition, where it's just like, I'm saying whatever comes into my mind. I don't even care. I'm going over here. I'm going over there. Let me tell you how it is. As we as we ease out of that, we really want to think about what is the power of communication and what weight do my words have, and what is the impact of what I'm saying. Um, we also may find ourselves kind of sticking to our guns around the topics or ideas that we want to discuss and trying to really prove our point. So again, choose your words wisely. Also, Pluto can be a tad obsessive. This has a tendency to looping thoughts that oftentimes are motivated by kind of shadowy urges and repressed desires that are locked in the underworld of the unconscious and emerge up into day consciousness looking for some object to attach to so that they can be met, acknowledged, resolved, and integrated, which is not necessarily what always happens. But if you notice looping thoughts or kind of obsessions emerge today, or even if more intense feelings come into your mental awareness, see if you can spend some time and try and follow the threads back down to their origin point in the underworld. We might get some very interesting information about ourselves as we trace these threads back towards their root. This transit may also help us to express to others what we are learning and uncovering about ourselves and our own internal world, and to teach others through our own process or mental awarenesses that we are experiencing. Which brings us to Sunday, November the 2nd. On this day, we have Venus opposing Chiron in Aries. And in this transit, we may find ourselves being faced with some core wounds. Chiron is a planet that deals with the wounded healer, the asteroid, planetoid. They keep changing what Chiron's designation is. But Chiron is the archetype of the wounded healer and also the teacher. And so, in an opposition, we have two planets kind of facing each other. Venus deals with values, relationships, love, aesthetics, beauty, and it is kind of staring down Chiron, which has a tendency towards suffering and core wounding, and also gives us the ability, when we are able to address, acknowledge, and work through these things, to help lead others or to teach others solutions to some of these issues. And so, with the opposition between Chiron and Venus, we're going to be faced with some of our core relational wounds. Chiron is a pain point, and in an opposition, we're kind of in a tug of war between the two planets involved. And again, Venus dealing with values, relationships, beauty, aesthetics, all of these good things. And as they oppose Chiron, we may notice some uncomfortable feelings or internal ideas about our relationships, about how we look, how we feel in our body. Chiron brings up core wounds and old stories and patterns that we have internalized from our past experiences and early childhood development. And so we may notice some of these programs coming up around our appearance and around our relationships and our ability to connect with others, which may have an impact in how we are feeling about ourselves towards the end of the week. Chiron has a tendency to wallow. When Chiron was wounded by Hercules' poison arrow, he went into his cave and suffered and refused to come out or do any of the things that helped him to regulate or feel better about himself and his life. And sometimes it'd be like that. And so, with this transit, something old and painful might get activated, which causes us to want to withdraw or to isolate. And this can lead to rumination and looping thoughts, which oftentimes just make it worse. There's this Buddhist parable of the two arrows that I really like. And in this story, this person goes to see the Buddha, and the Buddha says, "Hey, I'm the Buddha. What can I do for you?" And this guy comes up and he's like, "Man, my friend just shot me with an arrow and hit me right in the arm, and it sucks. I hate that dude." And the Buddha's like, "Well, did you pull out the arrow?" And he's like, "Yeah, I pulled it out like 2 days ago. But like, this guy's such an asshole. I can't believe he shot me. Like, I thought we were buddies. What is like, oh, I'm so mad at him." And the Buddha just tells him, stop drop the arrow, bro, and stop stabbing yourself with it over and over and over again, because that's what we tend to do. There is the event, the activating event, which creates pain. And then there is the story that we tell about the event, which is what increases our suffering. And as we tell that story about how this asshole shot me with an arrow and it wasn't fair, what we were actually doing is stabbing ourselves again and again and again and again with that arrow. And it's dumb. That's what the Buddha said, bro. That's dumb. And the moral of the story is that pain is inevitable, right? Shit happens. There are missed opportunities, misconnections, confrontations, things that are said that hurt, things that don't go our way. But suffering is optional. The suffering comes from replaying the activating event over and over and over again in our minds and making up stories about it and dwelling in those stories. And this is part of Chiron's suffering. He's laying there in his cave, wounded and pissed off, and feeling resentful towards his friend and student Hercules for shooting him in the leg with a poison arrow, and that totally sucks. But when we can just drop that arrow and stop telling that story over and over again and rewounding ourselves with how unfair it is and how I didn't deserve this. And when we're able to let that story go, we have the opportunity to begin working on healing. And straight up, it's much easier to stay bed rotting and stewing in our resentments than it is to face old wounds that are being activated and to actually put in the work to begin healing them. Like that's work. It's so much easier to like lay there in suffering and be like, "Oh, it's so unfair. I hate that person. I can't believe they shot me with an arrow." But this is the gift of Chiron. Chiron reminds us that we didn't ask for these wounds or these stories or these painful programs that we're running, but they're ours now. And they're ours to deal with. And these are gifts in their own way. And as we work through them, there's a release of energy that they provide. And in working through the pain points that Chiron reveals, helps us to tap into our life force and our life path. And it opens up doors to possibilities and potentials. Because oftentimes these stories keep us small and prevent us from stepping into our greater abilities. And Chiron's role as the teacher of heroes, and it tells us that when we are able to do the work to observe and address some of the challenging feelings that Chiron brings to the surface, we can help support other people who are dealing with similar issues in the future. And a friend of mine a long time ago said this thing that's always stuck with me. She was like, the best definition of a healer that I've ever heard is somebody who's so involved in their own healing journey that they can't help but take other people along. And I think that's really beautiful. And that's straight up work, to wake up every day and be like, yo, I'm gonna work on this. I'm gonna sit with this. I'm gonna be with this. I'm gonna befriend this. That is work. It's a lot easier to just, watch TV in the dark and, play the tape over and over again about how this is so unfair. However, when we do that work, when we're able to sit with those wounded parts of ourselves, when we engage in this healing journey, we end up taking other people along and being of service and being a great benefit to people around us. And this is the gift of Chiron. This opposition reminds us that oftentimes we are wounded in connection and we heal in connection. And this is in relationship with other people. This is also in relationship with the natural world, with the world of stuff, with pets, with, the life in general. And Chiron's first wound was being abandoned by his parents. However, he addresses this through becoming a teacher and mentor and coming into connection by being of service and sharing his wisdom and supporting others. This transit isn't easy, but it's an opportunity to notice what arises, and it helps to teach us what we need to do in order to heal. If feelings or old stories come to the surface today, this is a chance to turn towards them as much as we're able to and to see if we can offer ourselves some kindness and compassion, and see if we can offer these wounded parts of ourselves kindness and compassion and care. And, to think about turning towards ourselves from the place of a wise adult or the ideal caregiver, which we may or may not have had. And see if you can care for these parts that may be feeling activated or experiencing pain instead of replicating old patterns by dismissing them or just telling them to shut up. I can't deal with you right now. Go away. I'm busy. We don't want to replicate the stories that may have created some of that core wounding. We want to lean in and try and do something different. And maybe that just requires being like, hey, I'll listen to you. What do you need to say? What are you feeling? Do you need a snack? Do you need a nap? Do you want a breath? Like what can we do to support you instead of being like, I don't have time for you right now, go away. And so this is a great time to notice these parts if they become activated and to turn towards them, and just know that they may be holding old stories and just seeing how you can support them. And in doing this, you support yourself. And the healing work doesn't need to be full on. You don't need to jump both feet into your healing journey today. It can just look like a little kindness and compassion and curiosity in the moment. And that can really go a long way. And I think that's really important. Which brings us to the last transit of the week. This is also occurring on Sunday, November 2nd. We have Venus in Libra squaring Jupiter in Cancer. This is going down at 25 degrees and 1 arc minutes. So Jupiter and Venus are both benefic planets, and the benefics create ideal conditions to promote life. This is great. And when these two planets come into their square, their beneficial qualities are both present. Squares are generally tense aspects where there is sort of tension and friction between two planets. And there is the sort of vying for who goes first, who leads the way. And, so this negotiation may be present. However, what we're being asked is like, who goes first? Is it beauty before wisdom, or is it faith before creativity? Right? These questions are not that hard to navigate because all of their qualities tend to feel pretty supportive. And so Venus is social and likes connection and relationships. Venus likes hanging out. Venus likes nice things. Jupiter is expansive and wants to make things bigger. Bigger dinner parties, more nice stuff, more people. Yeah, invite your friends, order all the appetizers on the menu, whatever. The downside of this is maybe there's some overspending. So, try and have a budget or a cap if you want to go shopping on Sunday. But this is a great time to enjoy the company and connections of people you are around. Again, this is happening the same day as Venus opposing Chiron. So, there's the potential of some difficulty or challenging feelings come up, but Jupiter again creates a very expansive and optimistic container in which we are able to hold ourselves in and we are able to be held in connection. And so this is a good time, to enjoy the connections of the people that you're around, the relationships that feel good and generative and supportive, or also the connection with nature, the things that you find beautiful and pleasurable. And I think that this is also a great way of kind of supporting Venus coming off of that opposition to Chiron. Because when Chiron is suffering in their cave, if they can look around and remember all of the beautiful things that they have collected, all their medicines and magical objects and cool, neat stuff. That also helps to sort of pull us out of the looping or suffering of the wallowing. So, this is a day for doing the things that you want to do. Not necessarily so great for doing the things that you have to do, but this transit can help spark joy and it can bring a sense of ease. So even if we're doing things we feel we have to do, we'll have an easier time accessing some of the pleasant qualities of these activities. And also, this transit is happening on a Sunday, so you should make plans to chill and laze around and just do things that feel good. It's Sunday. You probably deserve it. Take a break, chill out, and treat yourself, find some indulgence. This transit can feel pretty lazy. When Venus and Jupiter get together, it's not about doing work, it's about having fun, it's about chilling, it's about feeling good. There's not a ton of motivation to make things happen, but there's motivation to really take it easy, lounge around, to feel relaxed and happy. And you know what? I support that 100. On the downside of this transit, it can tend towards overindulgence and overspending, and sort of, Venus is like, I like this thing, and Jupiter is like, great, we'll have more of that. We'll have 10 of those. And I have Venus square Jupiter in my natal chart. And one of the ways that I have experienced this personally is if I find something that I like, say a piece of chocolate, oh, this piece of chocolate tastes really good. Eight of these will probably taste even better. And then you have a stomach ache, you know, or an alcohol problem, or, you can imagine the ways that that might not be the best in the long run. And so, too much of a good thing is not always a good thing. And there may be a tendency to overdo things a little bit with this Jupiter Venus square. So, see if you can muster up some discipline around indulgence today. Just a little bit, just enough. Because overdoing it turns out it doesn't actually feel that good. It feels a lot better to have the right amount and to be able to sit in the sensation and to really tune into it and enjoy it, because when we're overindulging, it becomes almost compulsive, where we're chasing the next thing instead of actually feeling what we're experiencing. And it feels much better to find the right amount and to really recognize the pleasure in that or what it feels like, instead of going overboard or chasing, oh, but it could feel better. Oh, it could be even better. It could be more. And I think a key piece of this transit is the exploration of what joy actually feels like and what actually feels good, instead of the story in our head, oh, this will be better if I only had more. And I think experiences of joy and happiness and pleasure can really help build resilience factors and can be valuable supports when the going gets tough. So being able to hold an awareness of ease and good feelings and seeing if you can really imprint them into your mind and your body so you can access a little bit of that feeling in the future when you need to, if things are feeling challenging. This is important because in times of difficulty, we can tell a story that it's always going to be like this, which isn't true. This too shall pass. Everything changes. The good times pass, the bad times pass. We just keep moving on. And when we're able to access the memory and felt sense of ease and joy, it helps us to break that spell of that story and to feel some support in the moment. Jupiter is about optimism and faith. And when we can tap back into that sensation of well being and ease, it really helps us to cultivate that mustard seed of faith that this too shall pass and that things can change and that it can be a little brighter on the other side of whatever we are going through. And I think that this is incredibly valuable, especially as we are moving through pretty trying and turbulent times. And we are moving into Halloween and, the remembrance of people who have passed on and feelings of both celebration and feelings of loss, as we remember our ancestors and friends and those that we have known who are no longer with us. And this can bring up a lot of feelings. And so being able to hold that sense of joy and ease, I think really creates a container that allows us to hold some of these more challenging feelings and allows us to go through the grief process, whatever that looks like, and to trust that we are held and that it can be all right and that there is also joy in this world. And with that, my friends, I wish you all a beautiful and joyful rest of your day. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for your attention. I really appreciate it. Um, yeah, if you like this, like it, subscribe. I don't know, do what you do, do what thou wilt. But yeah, if you feel like it, share it with some other folks. It's nice to spread the word and get this out there. If you're interested in astromagia, look that up. It's going to be a great conference, and I'm excited to do a PowerPoint. Yeah, stuff's neat. Things are cool. I wish you all a great week in space. And if you have any questions on the Instagram, I'll be hanging out for a minute, just fielding questions if anyone has any. Until next time, my friends, be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and as always, may the force be with you. Bye now.